What if your blood carries a detail that science can describe, but still cannot fully explain? Not a disease, not a mutation in the usual sense, just something missing. Deep beneath the earth, in ancient layers of stone and dust, scientists have spent decades uncovering the story of human origins. They have mapped our evolution, traced our ancestors, and followed our journey across continents. And yet, even with all of that knowledge, one small piece of the puzzle remains strangely out of place. A blood type, rare, quiet, easy to overlook. But once you notice it, it begins to raise questions that lead far beyond the surface of modern science and deep into the older story of who we are. This is Rh, negative blood. A real biological trait found in millions of people and still surrounded by unanswered questions. Before we go deeper into this mystery, tell me in the comments, do you know your blood type? And if you enjoy slow, thought-provoking stories like this, you can subscribe and stay with me for more. Now, let's begin where all of this starts, inside the quiet flow of human blood. For a moment, just breathe. In slowly, out gently. You do not need to listen with full focus. You can let these words wash past you, like a calm river at night. If your mind wanders, that is okay. If your eyes grow heavy, that is okay too. The story will keep moving softly. At its own slow pace. Chapter 1. The quiet code in our blood. Imagine you are watching a drop of blood on the tip of a finger. It is small, dark red, shining softly in the light. From far away it looks like nothing. Dot. Just. But if we could shrink ourselves down and drift inside that tiny drop, we would step into an entire hidden world. Host. In that little drop, there are millions of red blood cells. They are like tiny, soft boats carrying oxygen through the body. Each one has a curved shape, like a small disc pressed in the middle. They move together in long, silent streams. On the surface of many of these cells, there are tiny markers, little proteins, little signs that tell your body, this is me, this belongs here. Some of these markers decide whether your blood type is A, B, AB, or O, the A system. Some of them decide whether your blood is positive or negative. This is where Rh comes in. Rh is a name for a group of proteins on the red blood cell. The most important one is called the D antigens. If you have this protein, you are Rh positive. You do not have this protein, you are Rh negative. That is all it means in simple terms. Positive. The protein is there. Negative. The protein is not there. Most people in most parts of the world are Rh positive. Their red blood cells carry this D antigen on their surface. Their blood flows through their veins with that quiet marker, unnoticed. Some people, a much smaller group, do not have this protein at all. Their blood is Rh negative. They live normal lives. They can be strong, weak, happy, sad, healthy, or ill, just like anyone else. Having Rh negative blood is not an illness. It does not make you less human. It is just a difference. A small, silent difference. Forced. And yet, this small difference has strange consequences. It can turn pregnancy into a fragile dance between two blood types. It can make a person's blood more limited in who they can safely receive from. Can turn that little minus sign after a letter into something hospitals have to pay attention to. Behind all of this, where did this difference come from? For a moment, feel your chest rise and fall as you breathe. Somewhere inside you, your own blood type is flowing. Maybe you know it. Maybe you do not. You've way. Your blood is carrying your oxygen, your warmth, your life. In that rhythm, hidden among those cells, is your own tiny code of positive or negative. The world turns slowly, and so do we. Chapter 2. A rare minority. Imagine you are sitting in a big hall filled with 100 people. They are all from different backgrounds, different families, different stories. They have different dreams, different worries, different memories. They talk in low voices. They shift in their seats. They look at their phones, or at each other, or at the floor. If we stood in front of them and quietly asked, "Who here has Rh negative blood?" only a small number would raise their hands. In many countries, about 10 to 15 out of every 100 people are Rh negative. In some places, the number is lower. In some populations, it is higher. Almost everywhere on Earth, Rh positive blood is the majority, and Rh negative is the minority. Sometimes the difference is even more dramatic. In certain parts of the world, almost everyone is Rh positive, especially in some European groups. Rh negative reaches higher percentages. These patterns make scientists curious. They show that something in our deep shaped where this blood type would spread and where it would remain rare. When you are just one person lying in a bed at night, the numbers feel very small and very large at the same time. If you are Rh negative, you are part of a quiet minority. Yost. You share a trait with people who do not know you and whom you will never meet. Your blood type links you to strangers across oceans and languages in a way you cannot see. If you are Rh positive, you are part of the wide majority. Blood type is common, familiar, expected. And yet, this story still touches you. Because the mystery is not about one group being better or worse. It is about why such a trait exists at all, and why it is spread the way it is. Past. Before hospitals, before modern medicine, people did not know about Rh factors. They did not know about antigens or proteins. Blood was a mystery. It was life itself. It was sacred in rituals. It was feared when it spilled. But knew that deep inside it there were tiny differences that mattered so much when blood from two people mixed. That knowledge would come much later. For now, let us gently step out of the hall, away from the crowd, and drift backwards in time. Chapter 3. How Science Found. Let's imagine you are standing in a white room years ago, watching two scientists lean over glass tubes filled with blood. It is 1900s. Electricity hums softly through simple lights. There is the faint smell of chemicals and dust. Glass tools clink softly against each other. Man, named Karl Landsteiner, is carefully testing blood samples. He is curious why some blood transfusions save lives, and why others mysteriously cause harm. He does not know yet about Rh factors, but he is about to uncover deep truths about blood groups. Landsteiner discovers the ABO system. He learns that some blood has A markers, some has B, some has both, and some has neither. This explains why some blood mixes well and some does not. It is a huge step forward in medicine. But the story does not end there. Later, in 1940, Landsteiner and a scientist named Alexander Wiener perform experiments using blood from rhesus monkeys and humans. They notice another pattern, another reaction. They find a new antigen, a new marker on the surface of red blood cells. Because they worked with rhesus monkey blood, they call this new factor the Rh factor. First, there is confusion. The science is refined and corrected over time, but the name Rh remains. It is short, it is simple, it sticks. Soon, doctors realize that this Rh factor is critical. A person without the D antigen, Rh negative, receives blood from someone with it. Their immune system can react. Body can see the D antigen as foreign and attack it. This can cause serious problems. Even more delicate is the situation in pregnancy. A mother is Rh negative and her baby is Rh positive. Their blood types do not match. During pregnancy or birth, a small amount of the baby's blood can enter the mother's bloodstream. Her immune system may then start to produce antibodies against Rh positive cells. If she has another Rh positive baby later, those antibodies can cross back into the baby and harm its red blood cells. For many years, this was a quiet tragedy. Babies were lost or became very sick from what we now call Rh incompatibility. But then, medicine found a way. Doctors developed a treatment called Rh immune globulin. It is given to Rh negative mothers to prevent their bodies from forming these dangerous antibodies. Many pregnancies that would have been at risk are now safe. So on one hand, the science is clear. We know what Rh factor is, a protein on red blood cells. We know what Rh negative means, the absence of that protein. We know how it behaves in transfusions and pregnancy. We know how to protect people from the harms it can cause. But on another hand, a soft question remains. Why does this difference exist at all? Why are most people Rh positive and a smaller group Rh negative? And why do the patterns of Rh negative blood across the world look the way they do? For a moment, just notice your breathing again. In and out, calm and slow. You do not need to solve these questions. You only need to let them float in your mind, like faint lights in a night sky. We are going to drift deeper from the bright lights of the lab into the older, darker layers of our story. Chapter 4: The Ancient Map with Missing Pieces. Imagine a giant map of the Earth spread out before you. Dark oceans, pale deserts, mountain ranges that look like folded cloth, thin blue lines for rivers, small dots for cities and towns. Underneath all of that, beneath the ink and colour, lies something deeper. The layers of time. Scientists study old bones, ancient fossils, and DNA to understand how humans spread across this map. They know that our species, Homo sapiens, arose in Africa and slowly moved into other parts of the world. Tens of thousands of years, we walked, sailed, and climbed into almost every corner of the planet. We spread. Our genes spread with us. Small changes in our DNA appeared. Some helped us survive certain climates or diseases. Some were random. Some faded. Some stayed. The Rh factor is part of this genetic story. It is inherited, passed from parents to children through genes. To be Rh negative, a person needs to receive the Rh negative form of the gene from both parents. This makes Rh negative a recessive trait, like a quiet card that only shows itself when it appears twice in a row. Because of this, Rh negative is rare everywhere. Prox. It is simply harder, mathematically, for two Rh negative genes to come together. In many places, especially where people with Rh negative blood were always a small group, the trait remains very rare, but in some populations, especially in parts of Europe, Rh negative is more common. For example, certain groups have reported higher percentages of Rh negative blood than the global average. In some of these areas, cultural and genetic history may have kept the trait more concentrated. Science can see these patterns. It can draw maps and numbers. It can say, here, this trait is more common. There, it is less. It can explain that the Rh factor is very old and that the Rh negative form likely appeared as a variation long ago, and then spread in certain ways as humans moved and mixed. But there is still no single, simple answer to why Rh negative appears most strongly where it does. There is no clear rule that tells us exactly why some groups have more and some have less. It is a mixture of history, chance, and environment. It is a story written in the language of genes and time. And when a story is written in that language, it always feels a little mysterious. We can see the letters, but not the whole meaning. Chapter 5, Between Science and Myth. Imagine you are sitting by a small fire somewhere in the distant past. The air is cool. The ground is hard and dry. You hear the crackle of flames and the soft murmur of voices in a language you do not understand. Around you, a small group of early humans rests after a long day. They do not know anything about blood types. They do not know the words Rh positive or Rh negative. They only know that sometimes mothers lose babies, that sometimes wounds heal, and sometimes they do not. Read the world through signs in the sky, patterns in the earth, the behavior of animals. Now, imagine sliding forward thousands of years. Fire is gone, replaced by candles and stone walls. Stories are written on scrolls. Blood is still a symbol of life, of family, of sacred lines. Humans have always felt that blood is more than liquid. It is identity. It is inheritance. It is connection. So, when modern science finally discovered these hidden differences in blood, some people began to build stories around them. They wondered, softly or loudly, what it means to have Rh negative blood. Some people suggested romantic ideas, that Rh negative blood might come from an ancient separate group of humans, or even from something non-human. These ideas are popular in books and on the internet. They speak to our desire for mystery, for specialness, for a secret origin. But when we look carefully at the science, we do not find proof for such ideas. Find an old, complex blood group system with many antigens. We find genetic patterns that show Rh factor arising and changing over time within human populations through ordinary evolutionary processes. Scientists can describe how Rh negative is inherited. They can show that it is recessive. They can track its frequency in different places. They can even link certain health patterns to Rh type in some studies, but they still cannot tell one simple clear story about why Rh negative exists in exactly the way it does, and that gap between what we know and what we wish we knew is where myth starts to grow. It is easy to see why. If you have Rh negative blood, you might feel a little different. You might learn that your blood is rarer than most people's. You might hear that your blood cannot safely accept Rh positive blood. You might hear about pregnancy risks. These facts can make the trait feel more important, more mysterious. But even if there is no evidence that Rh negative blood comes from some non-human source, it is still true that it holds a quiet mystery, not a fantasy mystery, but a scientific one. We still do not fully know how and why this trait has moved through human history the way it has. We still do not know every effect it has. We still have questions. questions are a kind of doorway. For a few breaths, let yourself rest in that doorway, pushing for answers. Not chasing theories, just noting that it is okay for some things to stay unfinished. The world turns slowly, and so do we. Chapter 6. The body. That remembers. Imagine your own body as a kind of living archive. Not with shelves and boxes, but with cells and molecules. DNA. The long code inside each cell carries the echoes of your ancestors. It remembers old battles with viruses and bacteria. It remembers the climates and foods that shaped your people. It remembers changes that helped your line survive. The RH factor is part of that memory. In a way, you are a walking record of choices that were never made by your mind, but by the silent work of evolution. Plus, your blood type is one small chapter in that record. RH negative blood might not give you special powers, props. It might not prove that you come from another world, but it does mark you as part of a specific genetic path that wound through certain places, through certain communities, through certain ancient lives. Some studies have tried to see if RH negative people differ slightly from RH positive people in health or other traits. Some have suggested small patterns, differences in certain risks, in some aspects of well-being or physical health, but these findings are often complex and not fully settled. They show that RH type may be linked to certain trends, but they do not turn RH negative into a separate kind of human. Instead, they show us something softer, that our bodies are full of tiny variations, and each one plays a role in how we move through the world. When you think about it this way, RH negative blood is not just a minus sign. It is a tiny fingerprint of deep time. It is a quiet reminder that you are part of a long, winding story that began long before you, and will continue long after. Maybe tonight, as you listen, you feel very small. Maybe you feel the weight of your day, your week, your life. But compared to the history written in your cells, even your longest days are brief. That is not a sad thought. It can be a gentle one, because if the story is so much bigger than us, then we do not have to hold all of it. We can let go, even for a while. We can rest, knowing that the blood in our veins will keep flowing on its own without our effort. Chapter 7. The Earth Below, the Blood. Within, imagine you are deep underground in a cool, silent cave. The air is still. Your footsteps echo softly on stone. The ceiling above you is rough and uneven, shaped by water over thousands of years. In the dim light, you see layers of rock stacked on layers, each one a different shade of grey or brown. If you could read these layers the way we read a book, you would see chapters of Earth's history. Times when the climate was warm and full of forests. Times when ice sheets pushed down from the poles. Times when new species appeared, and others vanished. Somewhere in these layers lies the time when our ancestors walked in small groups, unaware of all the worlds hidden inside their blood. The earth below and the blood within are both archives of deep time. The rocks remember the shape of ancient oceans. Your cells remember the path of ancient genes. Science drills into both. Geologists drill into sediment. Geneticists and blood experts drill into DNA and blood group systems. They ask similar questions. Where did this pattern come from? Why did it survive? How does it move and change? When scientists study the Rh blood group system, they find that it is one of the most complex systems in humans. There are many antigens in this system, not just the D antigen that decides positive or negative. Yet, somehow, that single D antigen has taken center stage in our story. The presence of D, the absence of D. A simple yes or no in a sea of details. The more they learn, the more they see how old and intricate this system is. Proust. They can follow it across different species. They can see that RH factor, in some form, stretches deep into our evolutionary past. It is not new. It is not sudden. Part of a long, slow process that took place while mountains rose and wore down, while continents drifted, while generations lived and died. So when we say that science cannot fully explain Rh negative blood, we do not mean that it knows nothing. We mean that even after all this study, there are still open pages. We do not have one clean, easy story that ties every thread together. We have many clues, but the full picture is still forming, and perhaps it always will be. For humans, this is hard. We like clear answers. Tonight, maybe you can let yourself rest in the idea that it is okay to live inside an unfinished story. It is okay to be a question. Pause. You are right now a living part of a mystery that stretches from the earth under your feet to the vessels inside your body. All you have to do is breathe. Chapter 8, A Soft Pause. In the story we have talked about what Rh negative blood is. We have drifted through the lab where it was found. We have walked across maps of the earth, looking at where it hides. We have listened to the old quiet argument between science and myth. Remember, you are not just a listener to this story. You are also a body quietly acting it out. Your own blood type, whatever it is flowing at this moment, carrying oxygen to your brain even as you listen, carrying warmth to your hands and feet, carrying the memories of your genes through time. The world turns slowly, and so do we. Want. You can place one hand gently on your chest and feel the faint rhythm there. You do not have to. You can just imagine it. Your heart working quietly, without noise, without complaint. Doing what it has done since before you were born. Inside that rhythm, inside that motion, your blood moves. Positive or negative, A, B, or O. Simple categories for something so complex. You are not required to solve this tonight. You are not required to understand every detail. It is enough to know that there are still mysteries in the human body. Not frightening mysteries, deep ones, old ones, lost. As we move into the next part of this journey, we will go further into the possible origins of Rh negative blood. We will talk about theories that are grounded in science, and we will gently touch the edges of more speculative ideas, always keeping a clear line between what is known and what is guessed. For now, let this first part settle. You have met the Rh factor. You have seen how a small protein, present or absent, can change how blood behaves. You have seen how a minus sign can carry centuries of questions. You are lying somewhere in the present, and yet, in your blood, the past is still speaking in a silent code. If your eyes feel heavy, that is okay. If your thoughts are drifting away from what I am saying, that is okay too. This story is long and patient, and it will be here whenever you return. Imagine yourself in the past. Imagine you are standing on the edge of an ancient valley. The air is cool and thin. The sky above you is wide and pale, with soft clouds drifting slowly past. Far below, a river glides through the rocks, quiet and silver. The hills around you are covered with low grass and patches of trees. There are no roads here, buildings, no lights, only the land, only the wind, only the slow turning of the world. You look down and see a small group of people moving along the riverbank. They are our ancestors. They carry simple tools. They move in careful, quiet lines. They know the land by feel, by scent, by memory. Inside them, as inside you, blood is flowing. They know nothing about Rh factor. They do not see their blood as positive or negative, and yet the tiny genetic patterns that will become those traits in modern science are already there, hidden in their DNA, passing from parent to child, generation to generation. They walk. They leave faint footprints in the soil. The wind and rain will erase those prints. Their genes, their blood, will continue forward through until one day it reaches you. It is strange to think about. But your body is a continuation of their bodies. The same basic design, the same beating heart, the same quiet red flow within. For a moment, feel that connection. You are not just alive now, host. You are also the result of everything that came before. Chapter 10. How a trait begins. Imagine you are looking at a long string of code. Not computer code, but the code of life. DNA stretches out like a long, thin thread, packed into your cells. On that thread, there are countless small sections. Some of them decide your eye color. Some shape your height. Some decide your blood type. Some do things we still do not understand. The Rh factor lives in that code. It is controlled mainly by two genes, called RHD and RHECE, sitting near each other on one of your chromosomes. Changes in these genes decide whether your red blood cells will make the D antigen or not. A long time ago, in some early human or pre-human, there was a change in this code. Small difference, a mutation. That change meant that, for that individual, the machinery that builds the D antigen did not work in the usual way. The result: their red blood cells did not carry the D antigen, were, in our modern language, Rh negative. That first person did not know. No one around them knew. Life went on. That person had children, and if they passed on that changed gene, and if their children survived and had their own children, the Rh negative trait would begin to spread, slowly, quietly, mixed in among all the other traits. In many cases, new genetic changes disappear over time. They might not help survival. They might be neutral. Sometimes chance alone keeps or removes a trait. But Rh negative survived, did not become the majority. It stayed a minority almost everywhere on Earth, yet it did not vanish, threaded itself through human history, appearing again and again wherever two carriers of the trait came together and had children. When scientists study the evolutionary genetics of the Rh system, they see signs that the history of this gene is complex. There are hints that different versions of the RHD gene have moved and changed over long periods of time. Some parts of its story are still unresolved. So, when we talk about Rh negative blood as an ancient bloodline, we are not saying that it comes from a separate species or from somewhere supernatural. We are saying that it is old, that it has roots deep in our shared past, that it arose as a variation in the human story, and then walked forward with us, like a quiet traveller in a long caravan. Chapter 11. Imagine a map of lights. Imagine the world again as a map in front of you. Times. Instead of mountains and rivers, you see tiny lights marking the presence of Rh negative blood. The lights are not evenly spread. In some regions, they are faint and rare, like a few scattered stars. In others, they are brighter and more clustered, like a small constellation. In many African and Asian populations, Rh-negative blood is very rare. In many European populations, it is more common. Some groups, such as the Basques of the Western Pyrenees region, have historically shown a higher frequency of Rh-negative, especially Rhd-negative, than many neighbouring populations. Pattern has caught the attention of researchers. They ask, why here? Why more in this population? Why less in that one? Some scientists think that the higher frequency in certain groups may be due to historical isolation, where communities had children mostly within their own group for long periods of time. In such cases, recessive traits like Rh-negative can become more common simply because the same genes meet more often. Other studies look at the ways different versions of the Rh genes are distributed and try to trace back how they might have spread from ancient populations to modern ones. They find clues, but not a complete story. For you, listening now, you do not need to remember all the details. You do not need to memorize names or percentages. Just imagine that map of lights and know that somewhere on it, your own blood type glows in a small, quiet way. You are one tiny light on a very large planet, and your light is connected through time and family and chance to countless others. Chapter 12. The mystery without a single answer. Imagine you are sitting in a quiet library filled with books about human biology. Pull one book from the shelf. It talks about blood types and the Rh system. It explains antigens and genes. Well, it is full of details about how the Rh factor works, how Rh-negative is inherited, how doctors manage Rh incompatibility in pregnancy. Pull another book. It talks about evolution, explains how traits appear and spread, how natural selection works, how some traits survive because they give advantages in certain environments, and others drift through populations by chance. Pull a third book. It talks about population genetics. It shows maps of blood group distributions, graphs, percentages. It explains how migration, mixing, and isolation shape the frequencies of traits like Rh-negative blood in different places. You read and read. You learn many things. You learn that Rh-negative blood is recessive, meaning you need 2 copies of the gene version for it to show. Post. You learn that it is rare everywhere, but more common in some groups. Post. You learn that it can cause problems in pregnancy if not managed, and that modern medicine has found ways to protect babies at risk. When you close the books, one simple question still does not have a simple answer. Why, exactly, did this trait arise and stay at the frequencies we see today? Post. There are ideas. Post. Some suggest that Rh-negative might have given small benefits in certain environments. Others think it may be mostly neutral, sitting quietly in the background of our genome, shaped more by chance than by direct advantage. Some research points to possible links between Rh type and certain health or behavioural patterns, but these studies are complex and sometimes conflicting. People say, science still cannot fully explain Rh-negative blood. They are telling the truth in a specific way. We know what it is. We know how it works. We know how to manage its medical risks. We know how it is inherited. We know some things about where it is found. We do not have a single, clean, satisfying story about why it is here in exactly this way. Instead, we have pieces, clues, partial answers, and that is where human imagination begins to reach beyond the data. Chapter 13. Imagine the stories. People Imagine you are scrolling late at night, just like maybe you have in real life. You find a video or an article that says, Rh-negative people are different, or Rh-negative blood comes from ancient visitors, or Rh-negative is the blood of a hidden lineage. The titles are dramatic, the stories feel exciting, they offer a secret. You might be something more. These ideas are popular because they speak to a deep wish many of us have. A wish to be special, wish to belong to a secret group. A wish to find meaning in a minus sign on a lab report. But when scientists are asked about these claims, they point back to the data. The Rh system, they say, is a human system. The genes that control it are human genes. Mutations that created Rh-negative blood fit within what we understand about how genes change over time. There is no solid evidence that negative blood came from another species or from outside our world. No proof that it gives psychics powers or magical abilities. There is only the quiet reality of a variant in a gene, passed down through families in the usual ways. Does that make it less interesting? Not really. Sometimes the true story is softer but deeper. Rh-negative blood is mysterious, not because it is alien, but because it is a small window into how complex, old, and subtle our own biology is. Your body, even if it seems ordinary, is full of these hidden layers. Traits that appeared ages ago, traits that survived by chance or by gentle advantages. We may never fully see. Psst. You are strange enough already. You do not need to be from somewhere else to be a mystery. Chapter 14, A Night Walk. Through the body, imagine it is night inside your body. Everything is dark, but not empty. There is movement everywhere. Your heart is a steady, patient drum. Your lungs are two soft bellows, rising and falling. Blood vessels are quiet roads, threading through every organ, every muscle, every piece of skin. On those roads, red blood cells float by in endless streams. Some belong to an Rh-positive person. They carry the D antigen, a little protein on their surface. If you could zoom in, you might see it like tiny bumps or flags on the cell. These bumps tell the immune system, I am part of you. I belong. Some belong to an Rh-negative person. Their red cells are smooth, where others are bumpy, lacking that specific D antigen. To their own body, they are perfectly normal. There is no problem. The immune system is used to seeing this pattern and accepts it. The difference only matters when blood from one body meets the blood from another. In transfusions, mixing Rh-positive blood with an Rh-negative person can create conflict. The Rh-negative person's immune system can see the D antigen as foreign and create antibodies to attack it. Pregnancy. If an Rh-negative mother carries an Rh-positive baby, tiny amounts of the baby's blood can cross into her bloodstream. Her immune system, if not protected, may start making antibodies that can harm a future Rh-positive baby. This is called Rh incompatibility, or Rh disease, when it causes harm. For many years, this was a shadow in human life that no one understood. But in the last century, doctors learned what was happening. They learned to test blood types. They learned to watch for Rh-negative mothers with Rh-positive babies. They developed Rh immune globulin injections that prevent the mother's immune system from making those harmful antibodies. Now, in many countries, Rh disease is rare. Quiet war that once had and in the dark between mother and unborn child has in most cases been disarmed with simple preventive care. So the Rh-negative trait, once a danger in hidden ways, is now mostly just a difference, piece of information on a medical chart. A consideration for doctors, detail that most people carry without ever thinking about it. Yet, the history of that detail is long, flowing under the surface of human life, like an unseen river. Chapter 15. Imagine, the first questions. Imagine, you are one of the doctors in the early days of understanding Rh disease. Host. You see mothers whose babies again and again, without clear reason. You see newborns with severe jaundice, with anemia, with fluid swelling their tiny bodies. You see patterns, but no clear cause. Then, slowly the pieces begin to come together. You learn that when an Rh-negative mother is exposed to Rh-positive blood, her immune system can become sensitized and create antibodies. You learn that these antibodies can cross into her next Rh-positive baby, attacking its red blood cells. You begin to understand that this is not a curse, not a punishment, not fate. Proud. It is a specific reaction following specific rules. You and others work to find a way to stop it. Eventually, Rh immune globulin is created, an injection that gives the mother harmless antibodies that coat any Rh-positive cells from the baby before her own immune system can react. This prevents sensitization and protects future pregnancies. Time. What was once a mystery becomes a managed condition. What was once a common tragedy becomes rare in places with access to care. This is the quiet power of understanding. The same kind of understanding is at work. When scientists look at the evolutionary history of Rh-negative blood, they may not have all the answers yet, but each study, each discovery, removes one small shadow. They can see that the Rh system has an unusual pattern of genetic variation. They can see that some versions of the gene are very old, and some may be shaped by balancing forces, where different forms of the gene might be favoured under different conditions. Still, no single final answer, just deeper questions. Chapter 16. You, in the middle of it all now. Imagine you again. Not as a point on a map, not as a case in a study, but as a person lying somewhere in the dark, listening. Maybe you know your blood type. Maybe you found it on an old report, or a donation card, or a hospital record. Maybe you are Rh negative, and when you first learned it, you felt a little spark of curiosity. I am rare, you thought. That means something. Maybe you are Rh positive, and you have never really thought about it. Tonight, you are simply curious about the strange stories tell about Rh negative blood. You are here. Your lungs are still moving in their slow rhythm. Heart is still beating. Blood, with its own specific pattern of markers, is flowing around and around, making its endless loop. Tiny, you are a tiny piece of a huge pattern. Think of it this way. Long ago, that first mutation happened in someone's RHD gene. That person lived, loved, struggled, survived, and perhaps had children. Those children carried the gene forward, generation after generation. The trait threaded through time, found its way into different families, in different lands, to different skies, crossed mountains and rivers, moved through wars and peace, through famine and abundance, and eventually it reached you. If you are Rh negative, you are one of the living carriers of that long chain. Or if you are Rh positive, you are still connected to the same broad ancestral story, carry other ancient traits, other quiet marks from deep time. Your body is not just your own. it is also a small continuation of millions of lives before you. Chapter 17. Imagine the Earth turning. Imagine we pull back from you now. We move above your bed, above your room, above your street. We see the city below, with its lights and roads and sleeping homes. We move higher, past the edges of the city, over fields and rivers, over mountains, over oceans. We see the curve of the earth, half in light, half in shadow. On the night side, billions of people are sleeping or drifting into sleep, just as you are. All of them have blood moving through their veins. Some are Rh positive, some are Rh negative. None of them chose these traits. They simply received them. The earth turns slowly. The cities glow softly. The dark side of the planet slides toward dawn. As it does, the story of Rh negative blood continues unfolding in hospitals and labs and quiet homes. A mother somewhere receives an injection of Rh immune globulin to protect her unborn child. A scientist somewhere runs a new study on Rh gene variation. Person somewhere donates rare Rh negative blood for someone in need. Most of them are not thinking about deep time. They are just living their lives. But whether we think about it or not, we are all part of this immense, slow story. Tonight, you happen to be noticing it. You are letting your mind float along the currents of this ancient bloodline, seeing it not as a conspiracy or a fantasy, but as a real, quiet mystery inside our own species. Chapter 18. A gentle reset. But before we drift further, let's pause for a soft reset. You do not need to remember every term. Kraut. You do not need to hold on to the names of genes or the details of studies. They can fall away, like sand slipping through your fingers. What stays is simple. Rh negative blood is real. It is defined by the absence of the D antigen on red blood cells. It is less common than Rh positive blood, especially in many parts of the world. It can cause problems when mixed with Rh positive blood, especially in pregnancy. But medicine has learned how to protect against most of these problems. Its exact evolutionary path is complex and not fully understood. Which leaves us with honest, scientific questions rather than clear, final answers. That is enough for now. Your mind is feeling heavy. If your thoughts are slowing down, that is natural. Not in a classroom. You are in the middle of the night, listening to a story that is meant to flow around you like water, allowed to drift. You are allowed to miss parts. You are allowed to simply feel the mood of the story, without holding on to every word. The world turns slowly, and so do we. Chapter 19. Whispers of copper. And sky. Imagine another angle for a moment. Some people notice that Rh negative blood is more common in certain groups, and they begin to connect this with other traits they see. They talk about eye colour, hair colour, sensitivity to light, or even certain personality patterns. They build narratives around these traits, weaving them into bigger myths. Some ideas are poetic. Compare Rh negative people to older lineages, to mountain tribes, to ancient wanderers. Some ideas are more dramatic, linking Rh negative blood to stories about star children or beings that do not fit into the standard human story. These are not supported by evidence in the way that scientific claims are. They are not grounded in genetic data or evolutionary models. They show us something about what humans do whenever we meet a mystery. We tell stories. We look at a strange pattern, like a rare blood type, and we give it meaning. Sometimes that meaning is helpful and grounded. Sometimes it is pure imagination. Often it is a mixture of both. Science, on the other hand, moves more slowly. It is cautious. It prefers careful evidence to exciting guesses. It has so far seen Rh-negative blood as a human variation, best explained by mutations in our own genes, shaped by time, chance, and perhaps subtle forms of selection. Yet, even within science, the details are not complete. Why here and not there? The why this frequency instead of that remains partly open, so we stand between story and data, between imagination and evidence, and we listen. Chapter 20. You, floating between worlds, imagine you as a bridge. On one side is the world of facts, microscopes, laboratories, genetic sequences, medical charts. On the other side is the world of story, myths, beliefs, personal feelings, strange late-night ideas half-whispered in the dark. You exist between these worlds. You can appreciate the precision of science, the way it has turned Rh disease from a common tragedy into a preventable condition. You can also understand why humans build legends around rare traits like Rh-negative blood. It is natural to search for meaning, especially when something feels unusual. Past. Your task is not to choose one side and reject the other completely. You can let the science keep you grounded. You can say, this is what we know. You can let the stories keep you curious. You can say, this is what we wonder. In the quiet space between knowing and wondering, your mind can rest. Between earth, time, and blood. Imagine, upon to be one. Imagine you are standing on the side of a mountain, somewhere between the ocean and the sky. The air is clear and cool. The wind moves through the grass in long, slow waves. Below you, a valley stretches out with small villages scattered like stones. Roofs are red and brown. The fields are green and gold. Far in the distance, the sea glows a soft silver. This could be many places, but tonight, imagine a region at the western edge of the Pyrenees, between what we now call Spain and France, a place where a group of people, the Basques, have lived for a very long time. Their language, called Euskara, is unlike any other in Europe. It does not clearly connect the big language families around it. It seems to stand alone, like a stone that the river could not carry away. For a long time, scientists noticed something else unusual here. Many back groups, a higher number of people have Rhd negative blood than in neighbouring populations. The numbers vary by study and by how they are measured, but they are often higher than the European average. This does not mean that all Basques are Rh negative, or that only Basques have high levels of Rh negative blood, but it does mean that, on that imagined map of tiny lights, there is a little cluster glowing more brightly over this region. Why? There is no single, simple answer, but the most grounded explanations talk about history and isolation. For long periods, mountain geography and cultural continuity may have limited mixing with other groups, the same families, the same communities, passed their genes down within a smaller circle. In such a situation, certain traits, including Rh negative, can become more common. Think of a small pool of water in a rock. Rain and streams wash through it. All the time, the water changes quickly. It is sheltered and quiet. The same water can stay for a long time. Basque region, in some ways, was like that sheltered pool. So the blood there kept its unusual patterns. Chapter 22. A world of different frequencies. Imagine again that you are looking at the world as a globe in a dark room. you touch different regions with your hand, and each touch shows you the general frequency of Rh negative blood there. In many European populations, roughly 15% or so of people are Rh negative. Some groups are a bit higher, some a bit lower. Many Basque samples. In many Basque, the fraction of people who are Rhd negative is higher than that average. In many East Asian populations, Rh negative blood is much rarer. Only a small fraction of people carry it. In many African populations as well, Rh negative is uncommon. In some parts of the world, it is so rare that finding compatible Rh negative blood for transfusion can be a challenge. These patterns are not absolute force. There is variation within every region, within every country, within every community, but the broad picture shows us that Rh negative blood is scattered unevenly, like patches of colour on the map. Again, science can describe this. It can say, here the percentage is this, there it is that. It can tie some of this to historical movement and isolation. It can look at the DNA of groups like the Basques and see signs of specific genetic histories, Proust, but it does not give us one neat story that explains everything. Perhaps that is part of the gentle pull of this topic sits right on the line where knowledge fades into quiet not knowing. Chapter 23. Imagine the genes like balancing scales. Now imagine that inside the deep code of the human body there is a tiny set of scales. On one side is the version of the gene that makes the D antigen, Rh positive. On the other side is the version without it, Rh negative. You might think that over time one version would win completely. If Rh positive were always better, it might push Rh negative out. If Rh negative were always better, it might push Rh positive away. But that has not happened. Instead, both versions are still here. Both still move through populations. Both still appear in babies born every day. Some scientists have asked why. One idea they explore is called balancing selection. This means that in some situations, nature may be keeping more than one version of a gene in the population, rather than letting one win and the other vanish. Sometimes the combination of two different versions can even be better than having two copies of the same one. Some research suggests that the mix of Rh positive and Rh negative forms in humans may be shaped by this kind of effect. For example, one study found that people who have one copy of the Rh positive version and one copy of the Rh negative version, the heterozygotes, might have some health advantages over those with two copies of the same version. This could help keep both versions of the gene in our species over time. The details are still being studied, and not everything is settled. This idea gives us a soft image. The human species holding on to both forms like a careful balance rather than dropping one. If this is true, then the presence of Rh negative in our world is not an error, part of a pattern that nature in its slow, blind way has chosen to keep. Chapter 24. Health Shadows and Health Light. Imagine a long hallway lined with doors. Each door is labelled with a different human trait: height, eye colour, blood pressure, susceptibility to certain illnesses, and on one door, Rh type. Inside that door are many small charts and notes. Some studies suggest that Rh negative people, in certain contexts, may report differences in health compared to Rh positive people. Some research has found that Rh negative individuals may describe more frequent problems in some areas, like certain allergies, digestive or neurological issues, while they may be less likely to report other conditions. These patterns are complex and vary between studies. This does not mean that being Rh negative is, by itself, good or bad. It simply means that, like many traits, it may have subtle associations with health that we are still trying to understand. Another door in the hallway might show us that, as we saw before, the most clear medical issue with Rh type comes from mixing blood in transfusions or in pregnancy, where Rh incompatibility can cause problems if not managed. Yet another chart might remind us that, for most people, having Rh negative blood is not an illness, and it usually does not affect your health. It is simply one piece of a much larger puzzle. When we stand in this hallway, we see that no door stands alone. Rh type interacts with many other traits, many other genes, many other choices. Diet, environment, stress, chance. Your health is not written by a single line in your blood type. It is written by 1,000 small lines weaving together. As we talk about Rh negative blood as a mystery, we always come back to this. It is a real, grounded human variation. It has risks, but also possible subtle balances. It is not a simple blessing or curse. It is a shade in the picture, not the whole painting. Chapter 25. Imagine yourself. As a chapter imagine, you could open a book that is the complete history of your family line. Page is one generation. Each chapter is a different branch that moved to a different place. If you flip back far enough, you would see ancestors you know only by names. Or not even that, just dates and places. Further back, the records would fade, and the book would become pure imagination. People whose faces you will never see, whose voices you will never hear. Through all of those pages, your blood type moves like a faint line. In some generations it is present but hidden, carried silently by people who have one copy of the gene, but not two. People who are Rh positive, but can pass on Rh negative. In others, it reveals itself fully, appearing in children who are Rh negative and do not carry the D antigen on their red blood cells. Once, sometimes it is tested and written down. Sometimes it is never known at all. Many of your ancestors lived and died without ever hearing the words Rh factor. And yet, they carried it. They shaped its journey. Now, here you are. You are not the end of this book. Host. You are a page somewhere in the middle. If you have children, your blood type, your Rh status, becomes part of their story too. If you do not, your genes still continue in the wider web of relatives and distant cousins. Threads do not end. They simply spread out in ways too complex to follow. Thinking this way can be humbling. It reminds us that we are both important and small. Important. Because in this moment, you are the living tip of an ancient line. Small. Because that line is so much longer and wider than you. Chapter 26. Imagine the earth breathing. Now, turn your attention back to the earth itself. Imagine it not as a rock, but as something that almost seems to breathe. Long periods, ice grows and melts. Forests spread and shrink, seas rise and fall, species appear, change and vanish. Humans are one of those species. Time on this planet is short compared to the age of the rocks beneath us. The Rh factor and the genes that control it are an even smaller detail. Date. And yet they have been shaped by the same slow forces of time. We look at the genetic history of the Rh system, we see signs that it has been influenced by these long-term processes, mutations happening here and there, populations splitting and joining. some versions of the gene surviving, others fading, balancing selection. If it is indeed at work here, is like a quiet rule that says, keep both. Keep the positive, keep the negative, keep the diversity. Do not let the story collapse into just one line. Why? We do not fully know. We can imagine that, at different times and places, having different RH types may have subtly shaped how people responded to illnesses, pregnancies, or other pressures. In some contexts, RH negative might have been slightly helpful. In others, RH positive. In others, still, the combination of both might have been the most balanced. Thousands of years. These tiny advantages and disadvantages could help shape the frequencies we see today. The Earth, from its deep silence, has watched this process unfold. Chapter 27. Between the known and the unknown. Imagine you are walking along a shoreline at dusk. On one side is the ocean. On the other is the land. Wet sand at your feet is the place where they meet. Waves come in, wash over, pull back. The line between sea and shore moves with every breath of the tide. The story of RH negative blood lives in a similar place. On one side is the firm land of what we know. We know that RH factor is an inherited protein on red blood cells. We know that RH negative blood lacks the D antigen. We know how RH incompatibility works and how to prevent most of its harm. We know how common or rare RH negative blood is in many populations. We know that some evidence points toward balancing selection and complex evolutionary forces acting on this system. On the other side is the open sea of what we do not know. We do not have a single final story of why the frequencies are exactly what they are today. We do not fully understand all the subtle health effects that RH type might have post. We do not know every small event in history that helped spread or reduce this trait in different places. You are standing on the wet sand between these two worlds, post. And as you listen, you might feel a gentle peace in realizing that it is okay to stand here. You do not need to dive all the way into the ocean of speculation, cost. You also do not need to cling too tightly to the land of facts in a way that feels cold or dry. You can let the waves wash in and out. Facts and questions, knowledge and wonder. Chapter 28. Imagine you are very, very small now. Imagine shrinking yourself down in your mind, smaller than your room, smaller than your body, smaller than a cell. Drift down to the scale of molecules and atoms, where the code of life is written. Here, everything is made of patterns, sugar chains, protein structures, DNA letters. At this scale, there is no story of Basques, or mountains, or myths. There are only shapes and interactions. D antigen on a red blood cell is, at this level, just a structure built by your cells according to instructions in your genes. Host. If the instructions are intact, the structure is made. If they are changed or missing in a certain way, the structure is not made. RH positive, RH negative, that is all. No magic, no fate, no alien inheritance. And yet, from such small differences, so many stories arise. Hospitals carefully match blood for transfusions. Mothers receive injections to protect their babies from RH disease. Scientists spend years studying the patterns of these genes across populations. People gather online to talk about having RH negative blood and wonder what it means about them. The smallest level. The universe is simple. At the human level, it becomes full of meaning. You exist at the human level. You are allowed to find meaning in small things, but remembering the simplicity underneath can be calming. It can ease the pressure. Proud. You are built from tiny instructions you did not choose. Your blood type is one of them. You are free to live your life without turning that into a heavy weight. Chapter 29. The world turns slowly. Imagine once more the planet spinning in space, clouds drifting, storms forming and fading, lights flickering in cities at night. Somewhere glaciers are creaking. Somewhere waves crash on a rocky shore. Somewhere a baby with Rh-negative blood is being born. Somewhere else a baby with Rh-positive blood is coming into the world too. Grow up with different experiences, different languages, different fears and hopes. Host them. Most of them will never even think about their Rh type. It will be a small note in a file, or not recorded at all. Few places, their blood type may matter more, as in regions where it is hard to find Rh-negative donors, or where access to Rh immune globulin is limited. There, the presence or absence of that little antigen can still shape life in very real ways. Research centres and universities. Scientists will keep studying this system. They will run new analyses, build new models, write new papers. Some of them will look again at balancing selection, trying to see if the mix of Rh positive and Rh negative is a sign of a deeper rule at work in our evolution. The story continues. Slowly, while most of us are busy with our own daily worries. Tonight, you have stepped aside from those worries for a moment. You have let your mind expand outward from your own life to the quiet flow of genes across centuries. The world turns slowly, and so do we. Chapter 30. A soft landing. For this part, we have travelled a long way in this part of the story. We have stood on mountain slopes and looked at valleys where unusual blood patterns survive. We have imagined genetic scales, balancing different versions of the Rh gene. We have walked through hallways of health, seeing that Rh negative is neither a pure risk nor a pure gift, but a complex shade in the picture. We have shrunk down to the level of molecules, where Rh type is just a small change in structure, pulled back out to see the Earth itself. Slowly turning, carrying all of these patterns forward in time. You, listening now, are in the middle of all this. Host. You are not required to carry it all in your mind. Host. You are not required to come away with a clear answer. You can let the details fade and simply hold the feeling. There is a small, quiet difference in some human blood. Science can describe it, but not tell every part of its story. That difference has moved through ancient lineages, through hidden valleys and busy cities, through times of great change and deep stillness. If you carry that difference, you are part of an old, wandering line. If you do not, you are still part of the same vast human river, slow rivers of time. Imagine ancient Earth in the dark. Imagine you are standing on the edge of a world that does not yet know your name. There are no cities here, no lights, no human voices, only the slow breathing of the planet. Night has fallen on an ancient landscape. The ground is bare in some places, covered in ferns and low plants in others. Far away, a volcano glows faintly, its lava a dull red thread in the dark. Above you, the sky is full of stars, sharp and countless. Time moves differently here. Millions of years pass like slow, heavy waves. Continents drift. Mountains rise and crumble. Oceans open and close. Creatures appear, change, and vanish. Long before humans, other beings walked this earth. blood flowed through their bodies, carrying oxygen, carrying life. Their blood had its own systems, its own markers, its own quiet codes. Somewhere along this deep road, the ancestors of humans emerged. Branch of the tree grew and branched again. Blood group systems we know today, Abo-Ronoch and others, began to form, shaped by small genetic changes over long stretches of time. When we speak of Rh negative blood as an ancient bloodline, we are not saying it is older than humanity itself. We are saying that the Rh system is a very old part of our biology. Human blood groups have been evolving for millions of years. Presence and absence of certain antigens, like the D antigen, are part of that long, slow process. To the rocks beneath your feet, even our deepest histories are brief. But to us, they are vast. Chapter 32. A thread. Through. Evolution. Imagine that you can see the Rh system as a thin, glowing thread running through time. Beginning. That thread is tangled among many others. There are early vertebrates, early mammals, early primates. Their blood group systems are not exactly like ours, but they share deep similarities. Life tends to reuse patterns that work. As primates evolve, the Rh system becomes more defined. In humans, it becomes a complex collection of proteins and antigens, controlled by the RhD and RhC genes. Different versions of these genes appear. Some are lost, some remain. Eventually, one particular variation, a loss or change in the RhD gene that leads to the absence of the D antigen on red blood cells, appears in some human or human ancestor. This is the root of what we call Rh negative. It is not a sudden miracle, not a bolt from the sky. It is one small change in a long series of changes. A mutation like many others, one that happened to survive and slip quietly into our shared story, time. This variation becomes a stable part of our species. The evolutionary history of the Rh system remains, in many ways, an unresolved puzzle, as scientists put it. But they can see that this puzzle is not outside the rules of life. It is inside them. You are a small part of this thread. Whether your blood is positive or negative, you carry the Rh system in your cells, like a signature written long before you were born. Chapter 33. The double face of a trait. Imagine you are holding a small coin in your hand. On one side, there is a clear image, the helpful face of Rh knowledge. Pot. We now understand enough about Rh factor to protect many babies from Rh disease. Test pregnant women. We give anti-D immunoglobulin where it is needed, parts of the world with good access to care. This treatment has turned a once common cause of newborn illness and death into something preventable. Host. On the other side of the coin, the image is darker. In many regions, especially in parts of Africa, South Asia, Latin America, disease is still a major cause of newborn death and disability. Globally, hundreds of thousands of babies each year are estimated to be affected by Rh disease, and many women who need anti-D treatment never receive it. In some countries, fewer than 80% of the women who require prophylaxis after delivery get it. The same small trait, the absence of a protein on red blood cells, sits behind both sides of the coin. On one side, it is managed, turned into a quiet detail. On the other, it is still a shadow, still a risk, still a reminder that knowledge alone is not enough, must reach everyone. When we talk about Rh negative blood as a mysterious or special bloodline, it is easy to focus on the romantic side. there is a gentle honesty in remembering this other face. That this trait, like many traits, has caused real pain when misunderstood or untreated. Yet, even here, there is something strangely comforting. It shows us that even the mysteries in our blood are not distant myths. They are part of real life, real bodies, real struggles, class. They tie us together across countries and economies and histories in the shared effort to protect new life. Chapter 34, Balancing Selection and Shared Fate. Imagine that the human species is standing on a wide, flat field. Above, an invisible hand is constantly adjusting small weights on a scale. On one side of the scale is the Rh positive form of the gene. On the other is the Rh negative form. The hand is not a mind. It is not a god. It is just a way of picturing the quiet forces of evolution. Post. Sometimes the weight of one version might grow a little heavier if it offers a slight advantage in a particular environment. Sometimes the other version might gain weight. Sometimes having one of each, being a heterozygote with one positive and one negative copy, might be the most balanced state. When scientists study the RHD polymorphism, some results strongly support the idea that balancing selection, especially heterozygote advantage, is helping to maintain it. In other words, individuals with one positive and one negative copy of the gene may, on average, have some fitness benefits compared with those with two of the same. This would mean that neither version is simply better or worse. Instead, both are part of a system that, together, gives the species a kind of resilience. Balancing selection tends to preserve multiple versions of a gene in the population. Even if each one has its own risks and benefits, it is like nature saying, "Do not put all your eggs in one basket." In this view, Rh negative blood is not a mistake. It is one half of a pair that evolution has decided to keep. For you as an individual, this may not change your daily life. But as a thought, it can be soothing. It means that even our differences are often part of a shared strategy. That your unique little minus sign is woven into a larger pattern meant to keep the whole group flexible, adaptable, alive. Chapter 35. Imagine your life as a short story. Imagine your life as a small story written on a single page. On that page, there are the big things: your name, your loves, your losses, your work, your dreams. There are also many small details. In the background, the length of your fingers, the colour of your eyes, the shape of your teeth, and yes, your blood type. When you look back at your life from far away, from the vantage point of deep time, many things that feel huge now become smaller. Arguments, deadlines, small worries fall away. What remains are gentle patterns. That you were born, that you struggled and tried, that you cared about some things, that you were kind or unkind, that you left a soft mark on others. Forced. Your Rh stat is one detail among many. It might have mattered if you needed a transfusion. It might have mattered in pregnancy. Cost. It might have mattered for some subtle health patterns you will never fully notice, but it does not have to define you. Instead, you can see it as a symbol, a reminder that there are parts of you that reach far beyond your own page, parts that come from millions of years before you, and will continue, in some form, after you are gone. In this way, the mystery of Rh negative blood becomes something quiet and soft. It is not a badge of superiority. It is not a curse. It is a sign that your body is part of a much older language. You are a sentence in that language, brief one, but still important enough to be written, Chapter 36. Imagine the body as a place to rest now. Imagine your body not as a problem to solve, but as a place to rest. Tonight. Tonight we have walked through labs and mountains and ancient earth. We have listened to scientists debating balancing selection. We have watched doctors wrestle with Rh disease and find ways to prevent it. But at the end of the day, your body just wants to breathe. Time your heart beats. It sends blood through your vessels without asking you for permission or understanding. Your red blood cells carry oxygen, whether they have the D antigen or not. Your organs are busy doing their quiet work, keeping you alive, while your mind spins stories and worries and hopes. You can, for a moment, let go of the need to control any of that. You do not need to adjust your blood. You do not need to solve its mysteries. You do not need to decide what your Rh status means about your identity, your worth, or your destiny. It is simply part of you. And you are allowed to rest inside yourself as you are. Let that idea sink in, like a stone settling gently at the bottom of a clear pool. You are not broken. You are not incomplete. You are a living mixture of known and unknown, fact and mystery. Just like everyone else. Chapter 37. The world outside, the river inside. Imagine you are looking out a window at night. The street is quiet. Maybe a few cars move past. Maybe there is a distant dog barking, or the sound of a late train. Above, clouds drift across the sky, hiding and revealing the stars. Inside you, another night scene plays out. Your blood is a dark river moving through a landscape of organs and tissues. It is carrying oxygen, hormones, nutrients, and waste. It is also carrying your Rh pattern, whether positive or negative, not as a separate thing, but as part of its normal motion. Outside, the world has its own patterns: traffic, weather, human routines. Inside, your body has its patterns: heartbeats, breaths, chemical flows. All of these patterns are temporary. The storm will pass. The traffic will thin. Lights in windows will go out one by one. In your body, cells will die and be replaced. Blood cells live for only a few months before new ones take their place. Yet, the patterns themselves continue for a long time. The city continues. Weather continues. The species continues. The Rh system continues. Seeing this can help us understand something gentle but deep. You are both fragile and part of something enduring. Your own life is brief and delicate, but the systems you carry, your language, your culture, your blood, are older and slower. Truths. They move through you, but they are not limited to you. Chapter 38. A quiet acceptance. At this point in the story, we could add more facts. We could talk more about the fine structure of Rh antigens. We could mention rare cases like Rh null blood, the extremely rare golden blood that has no Rh antigens at all on red blood cells. We could talk about the technical history of how different Rh variants were classified. All of that is interesting. But tonight, perhaps you do not need more weight on your mind. Instead, you might need something lighter. So let us shift gently toward acceptance. Body holds mysteries. You will never fully understand. That is not a failure. That is simply what it means to be alive. The scientists who study blood groups also live in bodies they do not completely understand. They, too, are part of mysteries larger than their knowledge. You do not have to know the whole story to be allowed to rest. The age of your bloodline, the path of your genes, the reasons why this protein is present or absent. These are deep, interesting questions They do not demand an answer from you at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. or whenever you are listening. Right now, you are allowed to say, "It is enough to know that I am here. It is enough to know that my body is doing its best. It is enough to be a small, quiet part of a big, quiet universe." Chapter 39. Imagine letting go of time. Imagine that time around you begins to soften. Minutes lose their sharp edges. Hours stretch and fold like cloth. Past and the future feel a little farther away. What remains is this moment. Your body resting, your lungs moving, your blood flowing. We have spent much of this journey looking backward into deep time. We have talked about millions of years, ancient Earth, long chains of ancestors, complex evolutionary forces like balancing selection. This can make your own life feel very small. But small does not mean unimportant. A single note in a long symphony is still part of the music. A single wave on a long shore is still part of the sea. If your life is one short line in the book of time, then you are free to let it be gentle. You are free to rest when you are tired, to be soft when you can, to not carry everything all the time. The world will continue turning. Evolution will continue working quietly in the background. Doctors and researchers will continue studying blood and genes, refining their understanding of Rh negative and Rh positive, of Rh disease and its prevention. You do not have to stay awake to supervise all of this. You can let go. Chapter 40, a softer, lower energy. As we come to the end of this part of the story, the energy becomes softer. The first parts, we explored definitions and history. We watched the discovery of the Rh system, the mapping of Rh negative across the world, the medical battles with Rh disease. In this part, we have stepped further back. We have talked more about what all of this means in a quiet human way. That our bodies are old, that our traits are shared, that our differences are often part of a balance rather than a war. We have imagined the earth before us, the field of evolution under our feet, the slow adjustments of balancing selection overhead. We have looked at Rh disease not only as science, but as something that still affects real babies and families, especially where care is limited. Placed you gently in the middle, not responsible for solving anything, simply present, breathing, aware, the quiet end of the river. Chapter 41. Imagine an ancient sky above you. Imagine you are lying on your back on a gentle hill. The grass beneath you is cool and soft. The air is still. Above you stretches a wide, ancient sky, full of stars. Cost, not the pale, washed-out stars you see from a city, but deep, bright points of light, some sharp and white, some faint and blue, some barely there, like a memory, feel very small under that sky. Some of those stars have already died. Their light is only reaching you now, after travelling through space for a long, long time. You are seeing a past that no longer exists. Your body is like that too. Blood type, your Rh status, is a kind of light from the past, but it belongs to choices and changes that happened long before you. It belongs to ancient humans, to quiet mutations in the Rh genes, to slow currents of evolution and migration. You did nothing to earn it. You did nothing to cause it. And yet it is part of you. You can let that thought float over you like a soft cloud. You are small under the sky. You are part of it too. Chapter 42. The simple truth. Inside the mystery. Let us bring everything to its simplest form now. There is a protein that can sit on the surface of red blood cells. It is called the Watch factor. If you have it, your blood is Rh positive. If you do not, your blood is Rh negative. That is all. The plus and minus signs you see after a blood type, A+, O-, B+, are just this. They are telling you whether that protein is present or absent. Rh negative blood is less common, much less common in many parts of the world. It can cause problems when mixed with Rh positive blood, especially in pregnancy, which is why doctors watch for Rh incompatibility and use Rh immune globulin to protect mothers and babies. Scientists know all of this. They also know that the Rh blood group system is large and complex, with many antigens beyond D, and that its full evolutionary story still has unanswered questions. That is where the mystery lives. Not in magic, but in the edges of our understanding. You do not need to carry more than this. Rh factor is a small part of your blood, Rh negative or positive. It is only one detail of who you are. It connects you quietly to deep time, and to many other people all over the world. Chapter 43. Imagine the Earth as a heart. Imagine the Earth as a giant, slow-beating heart. Are its blood, the rivers are its vessels, the clouds are its breath. Water evaporates, forms clouds, falls as rain, runs back to the sea. The cycle repeats again and again for millions of years. Your own body is a smaller version of this. Your heart beats, sending blood through your arteries and veins. Your lungs draw in air and let it go. Your blood returns, moves, circulates, day and night, waking and sleeping. Inside that flow, your Rh pattern is simply there. Present or absent, positive or negative. It does not have to be special. It does not have to be heavy. It just rides along in the stream. Think of it as a tiny stone at the bottom of a deep river. The water moves over it. The current changes, seasons pass, the stone remains. But it does not need to do anything. You are allowed to be like that stone for a while. You can let your thoughts be still. You can let the story pass over you. You can rest in the current without trying to steer it. Chapter 44. You, between beginning and end, imagine the moment you were born. You took your first breath. Your heart began to beat on its own. Blood began its lifelong journey, carrying oxygen to every part of you. In that first moment, your blood already carried its type, A, B, or O, positive or negative. Everything we have talked about tonight. The ancient changes in Rh genes, the quiet thread of Rh. Negative through history. The medical risks and protections was already written into you. You did not know it. No one in the room could see it without a test, but it was there. Someday, far in the future, there will also be a last moment. Your heart will beat for the final time. Your blood will stop moving. Your body will rest. The story of your own life, in this form, will be complete. Between those 2 points, first breath and last breath. Your blood never stops moving. Moves when you laugh. It moves when you cry. Moves when you are anxious and when you are peaceful. It moves now as you listen, heart positive or negative. It has carried you through every day you have lived so far, will carry you through the rest. You can feel grateful for that if you like. You can feel nothing at all. Both are fine. But you might take one slow breath and think, my body has been working for me all this time, even when I was tired, even when I was unkind to myself, even when I forgot to notice. Chapter 45. Imagine a line of people. Imagine a long, long line of people standing in the dark. The very back are your oldest ancestors, going back thousands of years. You do not know their names. They lived in caves, in huts, in villages that no longer exist. They carried water in clay pots. They watched the stars without knowing their nature. Blood flowed, carrying the early forms of the RH system inside them. Closer to you in the line are more recent ancestors, people who lived through wars, migrations, new religions, new languages. Some of them may have lived at a time when doctors first learned about blood groups. Some may have benefited from that knowledge. Some may have died before it existed. Closer still are the people you know or have heard about. Grandparents, parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, older siblings. Their lives touched yours directly. They held you, spoke to you, worried about you, loved you in their own imperfect ways. Their blood type was part of them, but it did not define them. At the front of the line stands you. You are not separate from these people. You are their continuation. Maybe some of them were rare negative. Maybe some were rare positive. Maybe they lost babies to RH disease before anyone knew what it was. Maybe later, someone in your family was saved by RH, immune globulin, by a test, by a careful nurse who checked a chart. Carry all of that forward, even if you never know the details. To tight as you rest, you can imagine turning back toward that long line. Toss. You can give a small nod in your mind to everyone who stood there before you. Thank you for carrying this body forward. Thank you for carrying this blood forward. I will do my best with the time I have. Chapter 46. The gentle weight of not knowing. We like to know things. We like clear answers, neat stories, simple causes. But many of the most important parts of life are not like that. We do not know exactly why certain traits appear when they do. We do not know why one person becomes ill and another, with the same risk, does not. We do not know all the reasons why balancing selection may keep multiple versions of genes like RHD in our population. RH system itself, even after decades of study, still has open questions. Scientists can describe it in detail. Even they will tell you, gently, that not every piece fits yet. It is okay to live with that. You do not have to fix the unknown. You do not have to turn every mystery into a story with a sharp ending. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for your mind is to say, I understand enough. Rest can remain soft. Negative blood, an ancient variation, a small minority, medically important, but not magical. Its full history is still being written. So is yours. Chapter 47. Imagine yourself sinking into the earth. Imagine that the hill you are lying on begins to feel softer. The grass supports you like a gentle hand. The soil beneath it is cool and steady. You feel as if the earth is holding your weight, taking it from your muscles and your bones. If you picture it, you could imagine yourself slowly sinking into this support, not in a frightening way, not in a way that harms you, just in a way that lets you feel how connected you are to the ground. Underneath you, layers of rock hold the memory of ages, the fossils of ancient creatures, marks of old rivers, the traces of climates that came and went long before humans. Your body is part of this same matter. The iron in your blood once came from exploding stars. The minerals in your bones came from the earth. The water in your cells has been in clouds, rivers, oceans, countless times before it passed through you. You are not separate from the world, you are made of it. When you think about your H-type, You can place it inside this larger picture. Host. It is one small way the universe chose to arrange matter inside you. Pattern of presence or absence on tiny cells. Built from elements made in stars, flowing through tissues made from soil and water and air. Stars. There is nothing in you that does not belong here. Chapter 48. A very quiet. Gratitude. As this journey begins to fade to its end, you might feel a soft kind of gratitude, not a loud, excited gratitude, but a quiet one like a candle in a dark room. You can be grateful that we have learned enough about Arch Factor to protect so many mothers and babies, even though there is still work to do in many parts of the world. You can be grateful that your blood, whatever its type, has carried you through every moment of your life up to now. You can be grateful that you are part of a living species, still full of questions, still learning, still changing. You do not have to say these words out loud. You do not have to feel anything special. You can let one simple thought form in your mind. Thank you, body, for carrying me. Thank you, life, for letting me be here for a while. Chapter 49. Letting. The story grow. Soft stories often end with a clear closing line. Real life does not. Tonight, we will not end with a sharp twist or a grand conclusion. We will let the story grow softer, like a river spreading out into a quiet lake. Run. Negative blood. Small absence. A line on a test. A question in evolution. Walked with it. From ancient caves to modern hospitals. Thoma. You have watched it move through mountain valleys and global maps. Listened. As science explained what it could, and admitted what it still cannot. Now, you can let this story drift to the edges of your mind. You do not need to hold on to the names. You do not need to remember the percentages. You do not need to keep the details of Rh disease or balancing selection. You can let all of that become a soft blur. What remains is a feeling that you are part of something ancient, that your body is both ordinary and quietly wondrous, that it is okay not to understand everything. Chapter 50. A very soft good night. The sky above your imagined hill is darker now. The stars are still there, but your eyes are heavier. The earth beneath you feels steady and kind. Blood moves slowly inside you, doing what it has always done without asking you for anything. We have reached the end of this long, gentle journey together, walked through science and story, through deep time and quiet reflection. You have seen that even something as small as a protein on a blood cell can open into a wide, mysterious landscape. Now, you do not have to walk anymore. You can rest. You are safe here in this moment. Body is doing its quiet work. The world outside will keep turning. The rivers of blood and time will keep flowing. You are allowed to let your thoughts fade. You are allowed to loosen your grip on the day. You are allowed to close your eyes and not come back to the end of this sentence. Thank you for letting me sit with you in the dark and tell you this story of ancient blood, of hidden patterns, of the small, mysterious ways we belong to the earth. Sleep well. Good night.